Hello and welcome to Following On County Cricketer. I'm John Norman alongside George Dobell, Nick Friend from the Cricketer magazine, and also Steve Harmison. Looking back at a bonus round really, came out of nowhere of county cricket. We're going to be talking about the ECB statement that was released yesterday in regard to Yorkshire, and also about a call up to another Overton, Jamie Overton, who we've been mentioning quite a lot in this show in the last couple of months. So strap yourself in. We're also going to answer a host of your questions as well. So stick around for that. And you are watching on YouTube or listening via the podcast, the Following On podcast, to Following On County Cricketer. Okay, top lines, guys. Well, let's start with the positive first. There was quite a spicy game of cricket that took place at Taunton this week, featuring two brothers going against each other, essentially. And you'd have to say that Jamie Overton won. Although, is it winning when you essentially knock your brother out or concuss him and he has to... I'm not sure if he was carried from the field, but maybe walked gingerly from it, all in front of your adoring father, who's wincing at the same time as beaming with pride. Only cricket. George, I believe
of course
you've spoken to Mr. Overton Senior.
Oh, well, we just exchanged messages, yeah. I mean, just to say congratulations, really. I mean, it's an amazing achievement to have your two boys in the same England squad, or two girls, or... I mean, I suppose the Currans have done it, haven't they? And the Hollyoaks did it. But in England, it's pretty rare. It's pretty special. I don't suppose they'll both play in this game anyway, but it's a really good achievement. And look, it was box office, so obviously I was at the Test match, but I couldn't help but watch. I kept on tweeting things from it because that was. Jamie Overton is such an exciting cricketer, whereas Craig is sort of quite pragmatic, quite line and length. You know what you're going to get with Craig, and that's not a bad thing. He's a reliable cricketer. Jamie, I think, as I said before, he puts together the best highlights package in county cricket at the moment. It is sexy as hell because he bowls absolutely lovely deliveries. He's fast. I think he's the fastest bowler in England available right now. He's not as fast as Mark Wood, but he's fast. He's fast as Ollie Stone, I reckon. He swings it, and he's got the sharp as hell bouncer, which Craig would be able to tell you about, and Josh Davey. He made them both retire hurt in the same spell. At the same time, what you've got to realise with him is he bowls a bit of tosh. He does. I mean, he is an attacking cricketer, and he can also bat, by the way. He's definitely, I think, a Test number 8 quality batter, which I don't think England have right now. So that's something with him as well. As a bowler, not quite the same, but he does remind me of Harmy. I mean, that is the obvious person to compare him to. And actually, really good Harmy as well. I mean, 2004 Harmy, when you were swinging the ball, was it in the Caribbean that happened in particular?
Caribbean, yeah. It swung in the Caribbean. It swung every now and again. It was just... weren't always an idea of which way it was swinging and how the velocity and degree was swinging to. But I agree. I like this boy. I think he's got, like, it's good the way you described the highlights. He is a highlights package. And I actually think England can fit him in. I really think they can fit him in. I actually think
How?
When you look at it, if Ben Stokes, because we're 10 days away, that knee of his might be a struggle. If Ben Stokes can't bowl, unfortunately, Jack Leach can't play. We have to play four seamers because you're going to kill the other three bowlers if Jack Leach doesn't get it quite right. I actually think then Jamie might fit into that bracket of we've got bowlers that can bowl line and length. Let's just take the handbrake off and let's have a go. We're 2-0 up. Fits with what we're trying to do with Brendan and Ben. He's box office, and the one thing I always felt about my game was mentally, I was quite strong mentally because I could bowl a ball which wouldn't have hit another set of stumps on either side or hit up or down. But I know for a fact that the next ball was the most important one and come back and, the next ball was the one that counted. And You could go, you could fire it, bang. You could put all the nonsense to one side. Because if you bowled a bad ball, possibly embarrassing, possibly could have been all over the shop. You know for a fact, hand breaks off. You want to bowl fast. That's your job as your fast bowler. And you come in and you bowl the next ball as fast as you possibly can. Jamie strikes me as somebody that does that. And if we've got somebody like up our sleeve, and he's a bit taller, he could cause problems on these wickets, which are a little bit flatter. We've got bowlers can bowl on line and length. What we haven't got is a mystery spinner or somebody that can just bowl a ball out of nowhere that can take a wicket. Jamie Overton looks as though he can bowl good balls on flat wickets, which would get good players out. So for me, he might have an outside chance at Headingley.
I completely agree. And he is the sort of player who I think they might want to play in, say, Karachi. He is the sort of player who would be useful on Australian wickets. I'd love them to have a go at him. There are all sorts of caveats. Yeah, he had an awful 2021. No way around it. He didn't even start the season. If you look at the first game Surrey played this season, I did it, so I can't remember who was in the Surrey side. There was he was behind people, which at that stage you're thinking, it's a long way back into the team here, Jamie. But he's back, and by God, and he's not taking the new ball. He's coming on. He's bowling with an older ball. There's a lot to like. He's very, very useful. England have loads of people who want the new ball. He seems to be happy with an older ball. Yeah,
but that's England because you got Broad Anderson.
Yeah, sorry to hijack this a bit, Harmy. I keep seeing your name connected with being a selector.
Yeah, a lot of that was down to I applied for the job about 8 years ago when Paul Downton didn't realise that it was me. When my CV went in and my application went in with all the tours I'd been on and represented England so many times and felt as though I could do a good job because my country needs me at the minute. I got a generic email that Tom Noddy, third 11 coach, would have gotten exactly the same that if he had applied, which I thought was a little bit disrespectful. And then I told Michael Vaughan, who, as you know, went and told the world, and Paul Downton wrote me a nice handwritten letter, which I've still got, saying, look, of that, we probably didn't think it was you, and we're sorry that you got that email. Sorry you felt as though you were being disrespected. It wasn't personal, so that's fine. And the next time round when I spoke to Straussy, I didn't feel as though I knew he had somebody lined up, so I didn't see the point of applying. This time, look, I love watching cricket. I love talking about the game. I love seeing the best in young players and seeing how they develop and seeing if they could play at the top level. And it's always intrigued me to give back and wanting to sort of be part of, and I would love to be part of this new regime. So if it became possible, then I'd jump at the chance. But I've also got mindful, George, Nick, John, that one of my best friends, who's done a lot and gone through a lot with me mentally, the mental health issue, and he's there all the time for me. And people will say, it doesn't matter, he's in a powerful position, he's there to make powerful decisions. This is a bit different from me and Keezy because of what he's seen and how we've sort of grown through our careers. And I really wouldn't want to put him in a position that if he's already got somebody in mind that he thought he could do a better job, that I would throw a spanner in the works. But all of a sudden, there's been articles about it. So, yes, I would be quite keen on having a conversation to see if that role would be something that would be good I could do to help the England cricket team. If not, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. I love doing what I do, and I can hopefully shape it from afar.
There's your article, George.
Got what you're game for, George.
I don't even have a laptop at the moment, so I'm not much of a journalist.
Harmy and come and get me, please. We haven't heard from Nick. Nick, if it wasn't Jamie Overton called up, who do you think it could have been? George is saying he's the fastest bowler on the circuit. Bryden Cast?
Bryden Cast in the Netherlands, isn't he? Cast in the Netherlands with the one-day squads. No, but look, most of the quick guys are injured, aren't they? I mean, we've sort of been there on on this topic. I mean, there are guys I've seen this season who these certainly aren't guys who I think are particularly close, but guys I've watched the season who I've been impressed with because they've looked a bit quicker. Ben Mike at Leicester, I think he's impressed people. He's got a bit of pace. Ajit Singh Dale at Gloucester, slightly slingy action, gets it through fairly sharpish. Once again, I say certainly not guys who'd be in the reckoning at the moment, but Two young blokes have been pretty impressive certainly with the pace of the ball. Tom Helm started the season very well, suffered injury, didn't play at Derby this week, but has come back into Middlesex's blast side. I think if he was fit for any period of time, I think he'd quickly work his way into conversations, because I think he's good. But Jamie Overton's always... He was first picked by England at 19 in an ODI squad. It's always been coming to this point, and I quite like that he's sort of got in at 28, having sort of, he may well get more injuries, but having done the injuries, as it were, and also having done that whole period that a lot of English fast bowlers go through, where they do struggle to control it, and I think his accuracy has certainly improved this season on what's happened in the past, and I don't know, maybe he's peaking, maybe he's reached that level of maturity, maybe Surrey using him quite intelligently, as you say, not giving the new ball, having guys that can do that job, and almost sort of letting him loose on pretty flat surfaces when they need to try and make a breakthrough, and also just watching him bat. I mean, John, you'll know better than us. I watched probably more of Surrey than we have this year, but I mean, you get 8 down, they've still got Jamie Overton, Gus Atkinson coming out to bat, Jordan Clark, Cam Steele batting down the order. I mean, they're just stacked full of batters, aren't they? So and Jamie, when I watched Jamie bat against Northants, when he came into bat when the game was very much alive, I mean, within an hour and a half, him and I think it was Gus Atkinson had killed the game, really. I mean, he's a proper batter for someone batting at 8, 9, 10. And I think his batting has gone the other way of Craig's in the last few months or so, you'd have to say. I mean, Craig was certainly the one who was the bowler who could genuinely bat, more of a bowling all-rounder, he was a bowling all-rounder, whereas Jamie was a bowler who could hold a bat. Whereas I think in recent months, I think the numbers would back it up, but it's sort of been a bit of the opposite. But I'm pleased he's done it this way, as I say, because it feels like it's been on the cards forever. I mean, he was in that England, he was called up to England ODI squads in 2015 against New Zealand, the Morgan McCullum series just after the World Cup debacle. So I guess there is a nice sort of symmetry to him being called up now for this almost identical series, and sort of after rock bottom, as it were. And and as you guys have said already, I mean, it wouldn't be at all surprising if he played, just because of the kind of cricketer he is, matching up to the kind of cricketer that Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes clearly want.
It's also how he's managed. When it comes to leading, captaining that maverick figure, it's, if you can manage that right, and not having worrying about what potentially could go wrong, i.e. a good player gets in, because these top players they're not feared of pace. Top players, top 6 batsmen, not many players around the world are fear pace. They see it as an opportunity to score. As long as he's managed right, that's fine. Michael Vaughan, people would say he was the best man manager I've ever known. I've talked about being the best liar I've ever met, because he could make me feel 10 foot tall when I'm bowling at 8 and over. He could get me in a position to constantly let go of the ball as quickly as I possibly could, and not be bothered about the repercussions of ball going all around the park. He'd just turn around and say, I'll give it to Fred, I'll give it to Gilo, bowling over the wicket. I'll give you a ball a foot outside of stump. I need you to take wickets. I need you to bowl fast. And I'm not bothered where it goes. If he's managed properly like that, which I think he will be, the way Ben and Brendan are, as sort of characters who want to move the game forward and move the game forward at pace. I actually think it might, as Nick says, coming in at 28 is a good time for him, but actually coming in at this environment would be a good time. 12 months ago, possibly would have been the worst time. It might just be a good fit for all round.
Can we move the conversation on to something that's a little less savoury? George, you've been at the front of this story for 2 years. The ECB have announced this week on Wednesday that they believe there is a case to answer to 7 individuals, all connected to Yorkshire County Cricket Club, in regard to the Azim Rafiq racism claims or story, or essentially it's been proven to be true, actually, what Azim's been saying about the club. There was a question asked of me on TalkSport, why is this going to be coming out in September, October? Would that be easier for the ECB? Is that unfair? Do these it has taken a long time to get to this position, and understandably they've got to be seen to be doing things the right way. I believe every single individual case will take between 7 days and 10 days to actually see through. So, it's going to take a while, but a cynic would say, well, let's get that news after the season's over out there, if it's negative, which it may
Yeah,
well be.
I don't think that's I don't think that's what's gone on here. I think, as I understand it as well, just I might be wrong, but I think they're going to run all the cases concurrently. So I think they're looking at it taking 10 days, but for all of them, because they're not going to keep the witnesses, there forever, are they? So anyway, that's how I understand it. No, it's taken a very long time to get to this stage. It's been a massive investigation. The wheels of justice turn slowly, and that's probably right because this is this is a defining moment in people's lives. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but so they should because you want them to be sure. And this is a defining moment in some of these people's lives, both the accused and the witnesses. So I've got no issue. The important thing is that it's done right. It has felt a little bit as if the whole process has had to be dragged out of the club. I mean, it's almost 5 years since Adil and Azim first complained at Yorkshire. I think it was September 2017. So it's taken a long time to get to this point, and we're not there yet. Personally, I think it'll drag on into 2023. But I understand up to a point why that is. You've got to get these things right, and it's very, very difficult. As I said, I think that things to look out for. I think that Yorkshire are going to plead guilty largely. There might be some details that they disagree on, but largely the current management accept that there was a terrible problem at the club. The individuals, who knows? And it might well be that there are more than 7 charged eventually, and there will be other charges to come, including against Azim. So it's a very, very complex situation, and one that the game hasn't really dealt with in any detail before. I guess it's a bit like the match fixing stuff when that started. A whole industry was created around training to ensure that it didn't happen again, and putting in all sorts of measures to sort of provide no excuse culture. I think it might be the same here. So it's a bit of a test case. It's ugly. It's not lovely. It's not a cause for celebration, but I do think it's a step on the road of progress. And if we're going to make the game more inclusive, we've got to go through this. We've got to go through it.
Well said. Okay, we will cover that in due course as and when further revelations or stories come from it. But for now, it's time to look at some of the top lines from the recent week of county championship action.
The top line.
Nick, look, if Hampshire go on to do as you predicted they would do and win the county championship, it's games like the one against Yorkshire and wins in games like the one against Yorkshire that they will look back on and say that was a massive result. And that was, they came from behind. They were 4 down, chasing 450. Well, they had a 450 deficit around that, and then there was a battle on the last day as well. So they had to continue fight, and they were up against it from the start. And to see that one through against essentially a rival for the championship. I know Yorkshire haven't won a lot of games, but the points table will tell you that they were neck and neck going into that match. That was a massive, massive win for Hampshire.
Yeah, and curiously, one of several teams actually who won not facing first team deficits, but facing sides who'd put runs on the board early. So I think Glos got 440 odds, Leicester got 440 odd, and both lost comfortably to Notts and Kent, I think it was. And I guess they're the games. As you say, they are the wins that I dare say when they look back at the end of the season, wherever they finish, are the ones that you almost take most pride in, aren't they? I mean, because that game, you almost have to be perfect by, you lose the toss, Yorkshire get 430, and at that point, the win probably feels a very long way away. And then likewise to not bat past Yorkshire and to be 20 odd runs behind on first innings. But what Hampshire will have all season, even without Mohamed Abbas in this game, is a very, very good set of teams. And Brad Wheel came in, effectively did the job that Abbas has been doing, took 7 wickets in the match, cleaned up the tail in the first innings and took a couple of crucial ones in the second innings. But Keith Barker's been brilliant all year, Kyle Abbott's been brilliant all year. And actually sort of quite understated, I think, in the game, where I think there was only 100 but a lot of runs. I think Liam Dawson in both innings was key, wasn't he? Sort of 60 odd in the first innings at a time when they were 100 odd for 4 and sort of I guess sort of dragged them back into contention, back towards that 400, and then And then another 60 on the second innings when you're chasing 200 on the last day and wickets falling around you. And I think there are a couple of slightly dodgy a couple of slightly dodgy calls there. I know James Vince wasn't happy with his, and I think it was Nick Gubbins. I thought he was a bit unfortunate as well. So yeah, to be 100 off for 6, chasing 200s, final day of the season against a good team, as you say. I mean, that is it's a proper result, isn't it? And a couple of losing Dawson towards the end with 10 needed obviously made it even nervier. But there's a lovely shot to win it actually. I think James Fuller sort of uppercutting over third man to a ball that was sort of didn't look like it was there to play that shot to, but a really good win. And as you say, I tipped them at the start of the season. I'm going to stick with them because they've got all bases covered in those games. If you can win those ones, we're probably not quite at your best, but you sort of match up to another very good team, then yeah, you can't do much more than that. But equally, Surrey did win a similar game, didn't they? Chasing a sort of nasty target on the last day.
Yeah, Lewis Gregory really made it a bit nervy for Surrey, didn't they? Who were, they reduced Somerset early. Somerset looked like they were going to be bowled out for about 120, and then Overton and Duffy, was it, were knocked out or knocked from the field. Then they came back. Peter Siddle, I mean, it's always Peter Siddle as well. Second innings, he comes in, just doesn't get out. And suddenly, instead of a target of about 80, you're looking at 210 or something. And, sorry, we've lost a few players, but despite a little wobble, they got there. But there was another big win, and that was Lancashire. I'd written them off, George, to be honest. I was looking at the scorecards throughout the day. I was obviously hoping Hampshire weren't going to win. I kind of was hoping that would be a draw. And I'd written off Lancashire's chances of chasing that down, but they did it perfectly, really. Chased with 329, day and 4 overs to get them in, and they did it with 4 overs to spare.
Absolutely fantastic run chase. I was wondering what people in Sussex were thinking about that, because obviously it was led by Luke Wells. I mean, what did he get, 175 or something?
Yeah.
And against a pretty good attack as well. Liam Norwell, I think, took a 5 for in the first innings. He's a good bowler.
Danny Briggs, another man from Sussex as well. That bowled 30 odd overs for Warwickshire. A lot of Sussex influence in a top of the table clash in Div 1, as you say. Do you wonder what they must be thinking?
Well, on the quiet, I watched a fair bit of yesterday. If I'm honest, Briggs had a bit of a shocker. I don't think he's at his best this season, to be fair. He obviously had a fantastic year last year. But he did bowl a lot of full tosses. Anyway, neither here nor there. I don't want to take anything away. A fantastically paced innings from Luke Wells. Because they were under pressure for a while. I mean, I think they lost 2 early. Anyway, brilliant innings from Luke Wells, and it did make me think, what are they thinking at Sussex as they go through, this interminable rebuilding process, which seems to be going on since the dawn of time. They have lost a beauty in Luke Wells. He is absolutely the perfect county player. He is. I mean, if the stars aligned slightly differently, he could be opening the batting for England now. He is probably might be a better player than Lees. I mean, Lees gets better every time I look at him, doesn't he? But he's a good player. He's similar to that in many ways. And so they've got themselves a top order player who doesn't seem to be used in any T20 leagues, doesn't seem to be used by England. He's just available, can bowl leggies too. Fantastic player.
Tell you what, Harmy, there's another top order player who doesn't play a lot of T20, doesn't bowl leggies, bowls off spin. A guy that we saw on TalkSport duty, didn't we, in November, December, India against New Zealand, and we were surprised that Rashid Ravindra wasn't part of their squad. I know he came over with the initial team, but then he was kind of released, the initial squad. I told Goffey to sign him. You told Durham to sign him. Durham did sign him, and he knocked off 200 on debut.
Yeah, I thought he was a fine player in that India-New Zealand series. He's batting number 7 now in that series. He's playing as a sort of second spinner, come all-rounder. But I thought he's electric in the field. This kid's a good player. And I remember being at Yorkshire with Goffey and saying, what about this kid? And he said, well, we've got Don Best. And Don Best was something similar, because I don't think Goffey realised he was a fully fledged opening batsman. And I remember one of my best mates, somebody I played junior cricket with, he's a marketing man at Durham. And they were talking about overseas players. And I said, go and get this kid. He'll not cost you a great deal of money. New Zealand are over. It suits everybody. He'll be wanting to prove his point. But Durham signed, I think they'd already signed Keegan Peterson at the time. Rachin Ravinder's come in and he's got 260 out once in the game. Yes, there might have been a flat wicket, but he's batted beautifully. And some of his shots, I watched a little part of the stream. Okay?
Might have been a flat wicket.
Watched some of his shots with Scott. Yeah, it was a flat wicket. It was a proper flat wicket. But him and Borthwick's, their partnership, 200-odd run partnership, was a thing of beauty, and he's stylish as well. And I couldn't believe that he didn't bat number 7 in the Test match and get the nod over Bracewell. But even more so now with all the COVID cases, he's not been sort of shipped in, and he might end up getting a game at Headingley come that. One thing I will say about this round of county championships is that I think you can see we've just come off the back of T20, because there's some big scores knocking around, but there's a lot of 40s, 50s, and 60s. There's not many. Look at the teams that have got 450 and 500. There's only one Centurion. There's a lot of starts. I think there was actually the Hampshire game. Hampshire game had 8 players get 30 or more, and nobody got 100 out of 410. So just shows you the transition from 2020, not concentration, longer format, everything that goes with it. I think we've seen in this round of championship games that the transformation between the two skill sets of white ball and red ball. There is a little bit in that. So for future reference, I think when we are trying to restructure the game of cricket, I like playing one block, then another block, then another block, because I think the players, and it suits the players. But some big scores this week. And for me, the game of the week was that run chase at Edgbaston. It's a huge win for Lancashire, and it keeps them in touch and distance.
There was a bottom of the table scrap, which may end up being decisive. Kent beating Gloucestershire, and at the top of Division 2, Nick, big win for Derbyshire. A lot of people moaning, a lot of Middlesex supporters moaning on my timeline anyway. But that's another statement, eh? The Mickey Arthur regime is well and truly on.
Did you see that? Is it Umar Akmal, Mickey Arthur? That was brilliant by Mickey. Umar Akmal moaned, even gone to the Prime Minister Imran Khan about why he's not playing. Mickey Arthur tweeted, "Just look in the mirror, son." It's the best saying to anybody in life. The best saying to anybody in life. When you start whinging and moaning, just look in the mirror, because the majority of the time, son, it's your fault. It's your fault. Brilliant, Mickey Arthur.
And he's not talking about that daft bandana that he was wearing during the PSL either, I'm sure.
No.
Yeah, Derbyshire. That's a big win for them over Middlesex, Nick.
Yeah, because Derbyshire, I think Mickey said this actually pretty openly at the time, was that they were competitive in a lot of games in that first set of matches without probably winning as many as they they drew 4. They'd only won one of that first set, and that was only the second win of the season against Middlesex, and they scored a lot of runs. Or Shah Massoud scored a lot of runs, Brooke Guest scored a lot of runs, Wayne Madsen was in the runs, but they weren't bowling teams out, and they've only lost once this season. So they were in, I think it was probably a similar place to where Durham have probably felt like they've been, just drawing too many games, being competitive without forcing themselves over the line, which actually is what Middlesex have done very well until that game at Chesterfield. It was probably a game that rested on Shah Massoud in the end. He was 98 not out at the end, chasing 200 odd, and on a pitch where, just looking at the scores, spoken to a few people who were there in one capacity or another. It was a pretty decent club pitch, but a game where it was really it was the outlier, wasn't it, from the round of games, because there was no score above 250, I think, in the game, and Middlesex really lost it in that third innings where they were going along pretty nicely. Mark Stoneman was 70 odd not out, and then they basically collapsed in a heap, and they were 120 off for 3, then 196 all out, and probably left themselves a bit too much to do. But no, big win for Derby, because Middlesex have got Notts on June 26th, I think, and that would have been, if Middlesex could have won that. If Middlesex had beaten Derby, then could have gone to the Notts game unbeaten with 5 wins out of 7. Then you'd almost say if they can come through that test, they'd be in a pretty good spot for the remaining, I guess, for the second half of the season, as it were. So it really drags Derby back into it. It probably drags Worcester back into it as well. The fact that Middlesex don't take those winning points out of it. So it's as congested as I think we thought it was going to be, isn't it? At the top of that Div 2 table, probably going down to Durham in 6th. Really, you'd only say that Sussex and Leicester are sort of both without a win and probably both too far back. But yeah, everyone, I mean, who knows what they're playing for yet? But there are 6 teams who will feel like they're right in it.
Good stuff. Unless there's anything else I've missed, guys.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say it might be worth looking at if Paul Edwards, the journalist, was writing, I think, for Cricinfo, and it might be worth reading his reports from Chesterfield because he was inspired. And if you like Paul Edwards, his work on that game was terrific. There's a lot about trees, if you like trees as much as cricket.
He wrote about...
It was classic.
He's written a piece of the Cricketer today, today being Thursday, in which he writes about the electric kettle in his Chesterfield hotel room. So he really did. He really did have a week out.
Do you know? I recently had to. I think it's okay to say this. I recently had to write the foreword of his book, and it's probably the most intimidating thing I've had to do in my career because I knew it was going to be the worst written page in the book. There's just no way around it. I think I started by saying it's like being asked, like a painter going asked to paint Van Gogh's Lou. It was just horrendous. I just felt completely unworthy. Anyway, it's a very good writer at his very best, clearly inspired by the Cricket Spire and all that.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, let's get on with the questions. We've had plenty of questions in here, so let's get to the mailbag.
The mailbag.
Okay, so it's the section of the show where we answer your questions. And Dave Studland has been in contact. He says, I know we want flatter wickets, but should the pitch at Durham versus Worcester should be rated poor? 1,294 runs for 17 wickets in 4 days is not really helping anything. Is that just a little bit of collateral damage, George? Do you think you got to do these things, and sometimes you'd rather go that way than the other? Is a very long-winded way of me asking a question. Basically.
No. I'd much rather go the other way. Look, I wasn't there, and I don't want to cop out. I really don't want to. But I wasn't there, so I can't really comment. You know, people were complaining about the pitch at Trent Bridge wrongly 2 days in, and it wasn't fair either. So I wasn't there. The balls aren't very good. They're really not. Every bowler you bump into will tell you that this season. But the general point he makes is probably right. There's nothing worse. There's nothing more dangerous to cricket, I genuinely believe, than a featherbed. Awful. They don't offer anything to batters. They don't offer anything to bowlers. So you accept that it's not an absolute precise art and that sometimes ground staffs are going to get it wrong. You accept that they've got a lot of pressures on them. It may have been an absolute dog of a pitch. Yeah, it really might have been. I hope that they look at playing on hybrid surfaces. I hope they look at playing first-class cricket on hybrid surfaces. They must. We do it already in white ball cricket. I actually think it will make the gap between international and first class smaller. I hope that they look at that, and there are days, and this may be one of those games where that would be very beneficial. But I wasn't there, so I can't be any more critical or
chuck in a slight caveat. Not so much caveat. I also wasn't there. There are the two things. Obviously, the relaying of the square. I think Harmison bet the was that 18 months ago. Obviously in the past it was the opposite at Chester Street, wasn't it? Where if you came to Durham and got
land at Chester Street and got a wicket.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, but the other thing I would say, so I think there is probably a bit of teething going on because obviously a lot. I mean, that has changed. That has gone from one extreme to the other, hasn't it? And the other thing I'd say is that actually, if you look at the pattern of that game, Durham batted as big as they could because they knew they knew they could only win that game by batting once. And they were very close to. They had Worcester 9 down within the follow-on territory, and actually, if you bowl the team out, if they take the final wicket and force the follow-on, it's still pushing it, and it doesn't make the pitch any less flat. But that doesn't. But then there is a game there, so it's a slight nuance to it. I'm not disagreeing with the question particularly, but I do think that's worth saying that actually. If that 10th wicket falls and they've probably got a 160 odd run lead and force the follow on, and strange things have happened. Worcester, I think, had a debutant opener who was on a pair going to that second innings to be batted. Durham know they can just throw everything out the game, and anything could happen. But no, I don't disagree with the premise. There are 1,300 runs for 17.
Okay, next question from Jim Amos or Jamis. How on earth, this is for you, George, maybe, how on earth can Sussex continue to justify their ticket prices for the Championship when they're essentially an under-18 team with a few second-team standard players? Can you help me understand the vision of the club? They pleaded poverty, but then spent big on overseas. Is that fair?
It's not going very well, is it? Yes, it probably is fair. Yeah, that's probably fair. Um, to be fair to the club as well, I mean, they've literally just appointed a new chair, John Philby. I know John Philby a little bit. I really believe in John Philby. I mean, how long has he been in position? A month? Give him some time. But I mean, the problem for supporters is they've been told for ages, give it some time, give it some time. And there's been a succession of quite poor decisions made, it seems to me. They've lost good players. The recruitment, I mean, yeah, you would hope that, there might be some white ball joy among the red ball misery, but even that isn't going quite as well as you might have hoped. Um, yeah, they're worrying times. This is the problem with long-term plans. If a coach ever says it's a 5-year plan, warning bells ring in my ears. That to me is saying, oh, just give me a long time to keep in a job. It's fair enough to be impatient at this stage. They have got good young players, but will they improve in that environment? That's the worry. I hope that they don't go the route of bringing in sort of role model pros, the sort of Kolpak equivalent of what we have now. I know that there's a time and place for that, and then there might be the right person out there, but some of these decisions become very short term. I don't actually know enough about what's going on at the club to tell you what the solutions are, but what a mess, and the Luke Wells thing must really sting.
I think the risk with picking a load of talented youngsters together is that if you keep on losing games, which is what they have done for the last 2 or 3 years, you're sort of breeding a crop of losers, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not as much as
We did it at Durham.
Tom Clark.
We did it at Durham.
Yeah, exactly. And Tom,
We did it at Durham.
it's weird because like, individually they are talented. Tom Clark is talented, got a couple of hundreds. Ollie Carter got 250 runs in the match. Henry Crocombe has got something about him to see him. Archie Lenham started his blast career very well, and I think looked all right. And to be fair, looks like he can bat as much as anything. And Dan Ibrahim got 50 at 16 against Yorkshire last year. Like there is individual talent there. But if you are, I mean, Tom Haynes is a 22, 23-year-old captain who's looking around and not really seeing many senior guys. Jack Brooks is in on loan for a month or two. There's not a huge amount there for Tom Haynes to lean on. And so if you're losing games and you're a bunch of youngsters and you're trying to work out how to win games, I don't quite know how you learn how to do that.
They could look at the template of what they did before. I don't know when Chris Adams went there. Was it 99, 2000, something like that? I don't know when Mushtaq went there, but they were
2000.
Yeah, so they were very
Before
Mushtaq.
that, I played against Grizzly in '99 down at Eastbourne. I remember that game. Grizz was at, I think Grizz would have came about 98, 97, 98. Michael Bevan was in '99 because I played against Michael Bevan, I remember, at Eastbourne. I think it was Dickie Bird's last first class match. I think Mushy came the year after, 2000-ish.
So Mushy was one of the great signings in county cricket because actually he was in decline as a player. He had been at Somerset, he went to Surrey, he looked awful, to be honest.
He was playing club cricket, wasn't he?
Peter Moores did what Peter Moores does. He inspired him, he had to put his arm around him and he made him into Mushy, the great bowler who won them the championship. Adams wasn't much of a risk at all. He was just a good player who was unhappy at Derby. But there is the possibility of doing something like that. All I would say is, though, that they put them into a team that was already quite good. There were some really good players there, weren't there? Lurie and Kirtley and I can't even remember. Lots of good players. Yeah, so yes, right. So there are all these, there are things they can do, but they're going to have to be really careful in these next few weeks when players are available. We know quite a lot of the players who are now available, some quite interesting names out there. They have to choose very wisely.
Of course, they have tried it this season to an extent.
Durham. We had the same thing at Durham. We had 99 Booney left, and then all of a sudden, you felt so sorry for John Lewis because John Lewis was basically given a bunch of kids, and then off you go. We had 2 or 3 years of it, and we were just swimming around in a circle. And then there was there was a sort of an action plan. Jeff Cook came in and with an action plan, and we brought in an overseas player in Mike Hussey. We brought in Dale Benkenstein, who was a Colpack player, great captain from Natal. We brought in Otis Gibson, eventually from Leicester, and we had Michael DiVinito. And when the Colpack system gets called, I always say you be careful because there was one or two good examples.
Yes,
And I tell
Murray
you what,
Goodwin at Sussex.
Yeah, Murray Goodwin.
What an incredible player.
But I look at us and I was like, well, me and Paul were in the team, Durham, in the England team. We were destined to play for England through that passage of time. But having the likes of, the names I've just mentioned, you add in, Hussey comes out, Chanderpaul comes in, and then all of a sudden, the likes of Plunkett, Stoneman, Borthwick, Onions, Mustard, there's about half a dozen more that were close to playing for England. They came in because they were playing with good, experienced players who were there for the right reasons. Yes, financially they were getting paid good money, but they were performing. And I think you've got to find balance between it working and it not working. And Durham never looked back from that moment, but they had a clear plan of where it was going. Sometimes you have to take a punt because, like you said, Nick, playing with just a bunch of young kids, you just end up swimming in a circle.
So there are a couple of
they
players
brought in
out there.
Pujara and Wiswan. They tried. It's almost like they. But Pujara scored 700 odd runs in that first bit of the season. They hadn't won a game in their first. I think they've won one, but they haven't won a game. Have they?
It's not all about winning, though. It's not all about winning. It's improving.
But it's about
win.
not losing as well, isn't it? You don't want to. Because I guess that's the thing, isn't it? If you're just breeding guys who are just getting used to losing, and ultimately, if someone is losing every week and is improving individually, then they may well end up being poached by another county anyway.
There are some people out there who might be useful. I'm just trying. You guys might know, but I think Deploy is available. He might be the sort of. I think Sibley is available. There are lots of attractive reasons still to play at that club. Obviously, a lovely place to live and all the rest of it. And it has generally been a very nice club. It's a club that generally has treated its players well. So there are lots of nice things about it. I do think they're going to have to be very careful with who they sign in this next few weeks.
The question was asked, George, about ticket prices. How can this club charge ticket prices for the championship matches? I've had an opinion for the last year or so and a bit more. I don't think we should be charged. I don't think you should be charged to go and watch county championship.
The problem is that you then lose your membership income. That's the problem if you don't charge.
You can still have your membership. You can still have your membership in other ways. You play 50 over competition. You play 2020 competition. You are still a member of the cricket club. But for me, championship cricket, a bit like that last Test match, we've just had 17,500 people be royally entertained. Because, for the love of the game. Now, 4-day cricket goes to 10 games in a season. I personally try and, the ECB give the counties money to help sustain and build that red ball game. And that would be to just let people in to watch the game. I'll be wrong, but...
No, I think it's a completely legitimate view. I'm just saying, look, the questioner's point is very, very valid. I actually don't know what the ticket prices are there right now, but they're clearly not offering great value for money, and actually they might just want the support.
Guys, we've reached the end of the show. Can you believe it? The end of the show.
The
end of the show. We usually end with ones to watch, but Nick's didn't play. George, yours didn't play. Mine's been released, and Harmy played for England. So we all watched him anyway, so there's no point. Does tell you a lot about where we are, I think, that's why I asked the questions. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the show. It's back to T20, then it'll be the county championship, then more T20. I can't even remember what happens next. Then it'll be the 100, then it'll be more county championship. Either way, the show's continuing through the summer. Oh, and there's some test stuff as well, which might get mentioned. Harmy? Oh, they had the 50 over comp as well. Wow, that's why there should be a dedicated county cricket show. Oh yeah, this is it. Thanks for listening and watching.